Some good, some not so good. When you look at the weekend series against the San Francisco Giants, as the Cardinals walk away with a split in that series after going up 2-0 in the first two games. A little bit of consistency problems starting to sneak in. We'll talk about the series, what went well, what went wrong on today's episode of Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily St. Louis Cardinals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to episode number 1 on this Tuesday, May the 10th of 2022. I am Lucas Smith, host of the show. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. Apologies for the lack of episodes in the last 2 weekdays. On Friday, I was traveling for a job interview, so good thoughts and prayers appreciated for that. And then yesterday, some scheduling mishaps. It was supposed to be a late night release, but ended up being a two-parter today. So apologies for that, but we will get the episodes out and to you guys today. It's going to be a good one. Talking about the weekend in this first episode, we'll be previewing the weekend or the week's series against Baltimore in episode number 2, which will be coming out a little bit later on in the day, probably mid-afternoon, when you can expect that one to drop. So this episode is brought to you in part. The headline sponsor today is BetOnline. BetOnline.net has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. So the Cardinals proved that they can compete over the weekend. That's my big main takeaway from the weekend after, like I said, being able to split the weekend series in San Francisco. You would have liked to see them take 3 out of 4, especially after taking the first 2 games, a 7-1 win on Thursday when Mikolas was phenomenal, and then a 3-2 comeback win on Friday with Dylan Carlson's late base hit. So you get a little momentum going into Saturday, Sunday. You got Steven Matz on the mound. You think it's going to be good. Matz gets lit up. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And then Sunday, the offense just wasn't able to get enough done outside of the Yepes home run. But overall, they proved that they could compete. That's what I talked about on Thursday's show after the Cardinals won 7-1. Or that's what I talked about going into that game. Excuse me. The Cardinals need to prove that they can compete, play with the big boys. They got a little 3 games, quote unquote, off here, if you will. No disrespect to the Baltimore Orioles, but 3 games off to play the Orioles, to play a little bit of a weaker team. We'll say it that way. Before the Cardinals play San Francisco again, then a 4-game set in New York, 3 against Pittsburgh. Then they finish out the month of May with a really tough schedule: 2 against Toronto, 4 against Milwaukee, 2 against San Diego. There's a 3rd against San Diego to start June, but 2 against San Diego to finish out the month. And the only thing that makes that easier or good is that the Cardinals do have all those games at home starting next Monday, the 23rd. So not a week from now, but 2 weeks or 20 days or something like that, whatever it is. 13 days, rather. Miscounting my weeks there. But nevertheless, all that to say, the Cardinals proved they can compete. Miles Mikolas was absolutely phenomenal. We saw Jordan Hicks take another step forward in the starting pitching mode of things. Saw good things from those 2 starters. So this is a rotation that I think can start making do a little bit until Jack Flaherty comes back, and it could be a little closer than we think, because Flaherty was able to throw a bullpen over the weekend, so hopefully he's able to make his way back soon. And the bullpen as well was just phenomenal, again, for large portions of the weekend. I'm going to look right to Friday to start talking about the bullpen. You saw Jordan Hicks go 4 1/3 innings pitched. He's getting up there. He's getting closer to 5 innings. We're close to seeing stretched out, ready to go Jordan Hicks. But I know some of these guys didn't have the greatest weekends after this fact, but the bullpen was phenomenal after Jordan Hicks on Friday. You saw Genesis Cabrera go 2 scoreless innings. Ryan Helsley, an inning and 2/3 where he struck out 4 batters. Ryan Helsley continues to just amaze this season and impressed beyond, I think, what any of us saw him capable of. I've always been high on Ryan Helsley. I've always thought that he could be really good. I've always thought that he could be a big boost to the bullpen. But what he's doing this year is phenomenal. And then Giovanni Gallegos comes in, gives up a hit in the 9th because it has to be interesting with Gio, even though he's calm, cool, and collected up there. But he's able to get a scoreless ninth inning. We'll go the day before. Miles Mikolas, 5 2/3. He was okay. He walked 3. He did a good start, but maybe not to what we've seen earlier in the year. Andre Palante eats an inning and a third, does a good job. Whitgren, scoreless inning. Whitley, scoreless inning. I know he got hit around a little bit on Saturday, but the bottom line is that these games are going to happen. Giving up 13 runs a game, they're going to happen like they did to the Cardinals on Saturday, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But at the end of the day, this bullpen is impressive this so far. Because even in that day that everybody got lit up for the St. Louis Cardinals, you saw Jake Woodford come in after Steven Matz got lit up. And Woodford goes 3 1/3, gives up an unearned run, but eats innings and doesn't give up a ton of runs as well. Naughton, 2/3 innings, scoreless. Whitgren and Whitley get lit up a little bit, but TJ McFarland's able to get a scoreless inning in that ninth inning. And as I mentioned, I know Cabrera had a really good day in the 2 innings that he pitched earlier in the series, but he did give up what ended up being the game-winning home run to the Giants. But outside of him, you saw TJ McFarland come in and get an out when he needed to. Andre Palante, Giovanni Gallegos, also scoreless innings. This bullpen, you have so many options in it. That's what I've talked about a lot this season, is that the fact that you have so many options to go to beyond just the big three that you had last year. I think that's what makes this bullpen so impressive to me. Helsley, another level. Cabrera, for the most part this season, has been effective. Gallegos had that one bad closing appearance, but he's been largely effective as well. This bullpen is going to work its way up the ranks throughout the season, in my opinion. In my humble opinion. Especially maybe if you get Jack Flaherty back, you have to make a decision on Jordan Hicks. Maybe he goes back to the bullpen. His stuff is better than ever, and now you've got a long man in the bullpen, or somebody who can come in and just wipe you out for an inning or two. So this bullpen proved that it was up to the challenge for the most part. Obviously, the Cabrera home run, a couple guys getting lit up on Saturday. Not a perfect weekend by any stretch of the imagination, but we're talking positives right now. Starting pitching for the most part was good. The first 2 games specifically. I'll talk about Matz and Hudson coming up in just a moment, but talk about Jordan Hicks for a minute first. Because Mikolas, that's not what we expect. Mikolas has had better starts this year. It was a rough start for him. Wasn't the worst start of the year for him, but it was definitely not his best, right? But with Jordan Hicks, the positive there, in my opinion, 4 1/3 innings, we're seeing him getting close to being a true starter, more of a true starter, if you will. Because the pitching needs it. The starting rotation needs him to be more of a true starter. And I think we're starting to see that out of Jordan Hicks. Okay, now the one last positive I want to get to before I move on and talk about the negatives a little bit from the weekend. Juan Yepez. Talk about a boost to the lineup. He hit his first Major League home run on Sunday when the Cardinals lost 4-3. It was a 2-run shot to the opposite field. But he has been as advertised. He has been almost better than advertised since he's gotten the call-up. 19 at-bats. I understand it's very early, but 19 at-bats. He's hitting .474 in those at-bats. He's got a home run. He's driven in 3. His OPS is 1289, 1,289. He's got a home run. Throw a double in there. Only struck out 4 times and he's walked 1. So his on base is 500 and he's slugging .789. He has been a boost to this lineup. He has been somebody that my mom talked about being able to shake up the lineup. Yepez has allowed him to do that, not just shaking up the guys that you already have, but throwing in a brand new random variable. We're going to see how it goes. And so far, Juan Yepez has been good. He's been very good. And I think that he deserves every chance to play that he can get going into this week. Whether it's DH, outfield, maybe first base, you give Goldie a day off before the tough stretch like I mentioned. But Juan Yepez, he deserves to play. Hitting is going to get you in a lineup, especially with that DH spot open now for the National League. That's going to get you in the lineup. So I think that he needs to be in the lineup, period. Juan Yepez has been very good, and despite the losing the last 2 games of the series and walking away with the split, when you're going on the road against a team like San Francisco, a split is pretty darn good. Obviously, there are some negatives to talk about. Talk about Matz, talk about Hicks. I need to talk about Paul DeJong because the shortstop position for the St. Louis Cardinals is still a problem for the St. Louis Cardinals. So talk about the shortstop position coming up here in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you about today's title sponsor, and that is BetOnline. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs as they get closer and closer to the finals, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, from live betting, playoffs, esports, and more. Whatever wagering information you want, BetOnline has it. So head to the website today, betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. BetOnline, where the game starts. Offensively, the Cardinals were moderately successful over the weekend. A couple of 7-run outbursts, even though they did lose one of those 7-run outbursts on Saturday. Then you score 3 runs on Friday and Sunday. Average it out, that's still pretty solid. But the offensive position that I want to talk about, shortstop. It's a position that's getting a lot of attention over these last couple of weeks because of the lack of production coming from the Cardinal shortstop position. Let's just go through game by game and see what Paul DeJong did. And disclaimer, I want to preface this. I like Paul DeJong. I'm rooting for Paul DeJong. But at some point, the results have to speak for themselves. So, on Thursday, in the Cardinals' 7-1 win over the San Francisco Giants, Paul DeJong goes 0 for 4, struck out once. This was when he was hitting ninth. So that was Friday. That was Thursday, rather. Move on to Friday, May the 6th. Paul DeJong hitting ninth. He goes 0 for 3. He strikes out twice. You go to Saturday. The Cardinals scored 7 runs. Paul DeJong, a little bit of production here. He goes 2 for 4. He drives in 2. Start to see a little bit of positive here. But then you move on to Sunday. Paul DeJong goes 0 for 3. Strikes out once. Gets pinch hit in the ninth inning by Corey Dickerson. So, yes, there's some positives. There's a positive day, rather, to take out of that on Saturday. Talking about, 2 for 4, a little bit of production. All right, we're seeing good things. But at the end of the day, when you're waiting, begging for production out of a guy like Paul DeJong for weeks, and then in a 4-game series, he gives you production 1 out of 4 days. Is that really enough to say, all right, Paul DeJong's on his way back. He's going to be good. He's fine. No problems. Let him ride it out. To me, no. I really want to like Paul DeJong. I do like Paul DeJong. I really want to see DeJong's production, I guess is the better way to phrase that. Because I think he's a great guy. I think he works hard. All these different things. But like I said, at the end of the day, the results have to speak for themselves. And the results right now, Paul DeJong's results, are not speaking very kindly of him. Because after his 0 for 3 performance on Sunday, despite a 2 for 4 performance on Saturday, 77 at-bats for Paul DeJong this season. We're getting to the point where these numbers are going to start to even out, or they're going to stay there unless you get really hot or really cold, right? Because really until this middle of the month of May, you start to see, guy gets 2 hits and all of a sudden his average jumps up 45 points. Or he goes 0 for 4 and his average goes down 75. We're going to start to see these averages stay where they are unless you get really hot or really cold, right? So 77 at-bats for Paul DeJong this season. Okay? And that's over the course of 24 games played. He is 10 for 77. That is a batting average of 130. His on-base percentage is 209. His slugging percentage is 208. His OPS is 417. These are his extra base hits this year. 3 doubles and a home run. He's driven in 7. He's walked 7 times. He has swiped 3 bags. He has struck out 25 times. Like I said, at some point, the results have to speak for the player. So why is he still up here? Why is he still on the Major League roster? Why is he still getting playing time? The long and short of it is defense. Maybe not necessarily his defense, although that does obviously play into it, But what is the defense going to lose if you put Paul DeJong on the bench, you move Edman to short, and you put Nolan Gorman up at second base if he gets the call up? That's the Ali Marmol reasoning for it. Paul DeJong is his guy to win or lose right now. Well, right now, Paul DeJong is not giving you very many winning at-bats. I'll say that right now. So why have we not seen a change? We've known this for a very long time, that the St. Louis Cardinals, for good, better, or worse, are going to give Paul DeJong every shadow of a doubt, or every chance they can, for Paul DeJong to prove that he can be this team's starting shortstop. And I'm sorry, I've been a big proponent of Paul DeJong. I've been one that has been very patient with Paul DeJong and what I've talked about. I like Paul DeJong. At some point, results speak volumes. If we see another week of this, I understand you're going to go through a gauntlet of your schedule, or a gauntlet of a schedule in a week and a half or so after you face Pittsburgh next weekend. Not this weekend, but next weekend. And you're going to see some tough pitching. You're going to see some really good pitching in that Milwaukee series. So I understand maybe that the timing of it isn't right. Maybe you wait until you play, Chicago and then Cincinnati the next weekend, then 5 games against Pittsburgh. Maybe you wait to see Gorman then when the pitching might not be as strong. Maybe there's an argument to that. I don't know. But Nolan Gorman needs some consideration. He got off to a blistering start at the minor league level. Blistering. He is ready. He is ready for the major league level. And I'm not saying Paul DeJong needs to be DFA'd. I'm not saying he needs to be dropped. I'm not saying he needs to be cut. What I am saying is that he needs to be benched. I try not to have these hot emotional takes very often, or just these off-the-cuff takes, but I think this one is well warranted. I don't think I'm alone in this take. Now, that doesn't always necessarily mean that we're right in our group takes. But I do think that it is just simply time. Especially if we see it for another week. Now, all this to be said, Paul DeJong might go off this week against Baltimore and just absolutely tear it up. That's fine. Oops, excuse me. That might happen. I'm aware that there's a chance of that happening. But let's not fall for the fool's gold there, because Baltimore, spoiler alert, is not very good. Now, they might not be as bad as the Cincinnati Reds are, a blistering 6-23. But Baltimore still sits at 12-17. Baltimore's on a nice run. They're 6-4 in their last 10. They've won 2 in a row. They're not as bad as they were last year. Not trying to compare them to that, but there still is a chance that DeJong has some success this week because of the lack of talent on Baltimore. I still think if that happens, where's the consistency involved? Because Paul DeJong is known to go on these streaks for a couple weeks or a week or so where he just is on fire and he's untouchable. You've got to play him. I want to see him find some level of consistency for more than a week. That's what I want. You want to go and hit 3 home runs in 4 days? Great. How about you hit more than 200, have an on-base higher than 208 or 209, whatever it was, for more than a week? Then we'll talk about you finding it and deserving the starting spot. So, funny that I mentioned consistency. It's almost like I planned it, because the next segment, we're talking about the lack of consistency in one Steven Matz. So talking about Steven Matz as well as Dakota Hudson, lack of consistency there, coming up here in just a moment. But summer is coming, and with summer, you're going to need some food on the go. Well, Built Bars is the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations. You can throw them in your bags and your kids' backpacks. You need to make sure that everybody has a bar, so they are fueled for your summer adventures. The best part about Built Bars, as well as they are healthy and delicious. They are not one or the other. They are both. You do not need to sacrifice delicious food for health or health for delicious food. With Built Bar, you can have both, and it's easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order right now. All Built Bars and Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means with Built Bar, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. These are incredible flavors to choose from because these puffs, the first ever protein-infused marshmallow, you've got flavors like banana cream pie and even churro. Who doesn't want a protein bar that tastes like a churro and that's only 140 calories? Now, that's not enough. You can try a mixed box of puffs. You get 12 flavors of Built Bars and Puffs. So many different options to have all the flavors of Built Bars and Puffs. Built Bar, make sure that there's something for everyone. So go to Built.com right now to get all of your favorites. Banana cream pie, raspberry, double chocolate. That's my favorite. And so many more. They are all delicious with new flavors coming out all the time. So check them out at Built.com. So go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for 15% off your order. Once again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Cardinals were unable to get consistency from Steven Matz or Dakota Hudson over the weekend. So what's the next step for them? So before talk about that, I do want to thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. Apologies for the lack of episodes recently, but we're back on track today. And for your next listen, in between this one and the bonus episode today, be sure to check out the Locked On Now podcast. Recaps of MLB games with analysis from our local experts, taking fans through the season like no other network. Guys, really, this is just me talking. No other network does what the Locked On Network does, especially with podcasts like the Locked On Now podcast. So they are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. But let's talk about Steven Matz and Dakota Hudson. We're going to start with Steven Matz. Steven Matz, straight up, did not have it on Saturday. Cardinals were in their victory blues. They were looking good. They get out to a 1-0 lead in the first inning on an Arenado single. You're feeling good about it. You've won the first two games. You're up early. And then the grand slam happens in the bottom of the first. So that was an absolute laser by Wilmer Flores. There's no doubt. And then you get a couple runs, so you're only down by one. All right, Steven Matz, settle in. You get a home run given up by Dubon. Ruff hits one out. And then all of a sudden it's 8-1. And you're thinking, what the heck just happened? Steven Matz did not have it. His ERA balloons up to 7.01. His ERA is going to have a tough time being brought down with the amount of runs he's given up in a couple of very short starts. Because remember, his first start against Pittsburgh did not go very well either. He gave up a bunch of runs early in that game as well, as he was only able to go 3 innings. He gave up 7 earned runs. So he's either really, really, really bad or pretty good. Because this is his game logs so far for the season, okay? April 10th against Pittsburgh, 3 innings, 7 earned runs, 9 hits. He comes back on the 16th against Milwaukee. He goes 5 2/3 of shutout baseball. He comes back on the 22nd against Cincinnati, 5 innings, 1 earned run. Solid stuff. And then he goes out against the New York Mets, 4 innings, 4 earned runs. Not great. But then on May 2nd, his start before last one against Kansas City, 6 innings of shutout baseball. And then you come back again on May 7th, gives up 3 home runs, 8 earned runs, and 2 innings pitched. So not a good, it's either there or it's not. Plain and simple for Steven Matz. So you don't know what you're going to do. Right now, you don't know what you're getting out of Steven Matz. Because his ERA sits at 7.01 despite some pretty solid starts mixed in there. So if you're just looking at the line of 3-2, 7.01 ERA and 25 innings pitched with a whip of 1.64, you're probably not thinking very good things about Steven Matz. But as I mentioned, he's got some good starts mixed in there. He really has. So the next step for Steven Matz is being able to show consistency. And I think the next step, I think somebody else had this opinion as well, the next step for Ali Marmol is to know when to pull Steven Matz. I thought he was left out maybe a little bit too long yesterday. Hindsight's 20/20, I understand that. But still, probably could have yanked him a little bit sooner, got him out of the game a little bit sooner. And then you don't know what happens because the bullpen overall was pretty good behind Matz, outside of the couple that I've mentioned, Whitley being one of them. But Woodford was really good behind Matz. So Matz needs to be consistent. The other person that needs to be a little bit more consistent, Dakota Hudson. What are the 2 keys with Dakota Hudson, everybody, that I talk about all the time? Say it with me. Don't walk anybody. Keep the ball in the ballpark. What are 2 things that Dakota Hudson did not do? Or did do, I guess. One thing he did, one thing he didn't do. He didn't keep the ball in the ballpark, and you walk people. 4 2/3, 5 hits, 3 earned, 4 walks, and a home run given up. Didn't strike out a batter. He got 11 groundouts. So that was a positive. I think Dakota Hudson has a capability to be an above-average pitcher. He just needs to do those two things. It sounds very simple. I'm not trying to oversimplify it. Sure, there's tons of mechanical things that he needs to work on. But you can't have a starting pitcher a day after a pitcher goes 2 innings in Steven Matz. You've got to go more than 4 2/3. You've got to be able to say, all right, this team needs me to get some innings. This team needs me to go 6 or 7. Let's roll. I understand the Cardinals had an off day yesterday, so Cabrera pitched on back-to-back days, but he had an off day yesterday, so he could be available tonight. Gallegos, same deal. Pitched a lot over the weekend, but he could be available tonight because of the off day yesterday. An off day that the Cardinals, in my opinion, really needed. But Dakota Hudson needs to be able to find consistency in his own right and to say, all right, this team needs me to eat some innings. Let's eat some innings. Let's find the stuff, and even if I don't have the stuff, let's find a way to get outs. Let's not walk people. Let's not give up home runs. Let's roll. Starting pitching needs to be more consistent for this team. We'll see what happens when Jack Flaherty comes back, because when Jack Flaherty does come back, I think the Cardinals do have an interesting decision to make. Mikolas isn't going anywhere. Matz isn't going anywhere. I understand that. But then, and Wainwright's not going anywhere either. Wainwright's not getting demoted to the bullpen. And then you've got Hicks and Hudson. Both have bullpen experience in their careers. Which do you trust more to be a starter, in my opinion, is what it comes down to at that point. That's an interesting discussion. My mind immediately, right now, based on how they're pitching right now, honestly, leans towards Jordan Hicks. Because we're seeing him although it might be small, we're seeing him take steps towards being a productive starting pitcher with each and every start. We're seeing him being stretched out. The pitch count keeps getting higher and higher. It will be no pitch count at some point, or a normal pitch count at some point. So I think that's going to be the real question when Jack Flaherty comes back. Who goes down? And if Dakota Hudson doesn't find some consistency real quick, it could be maybe not him going down, but it could be him going back to the bullpen, maybe. Now, he's been a starter for a handful of years, so he does have the pedigree and the resume for it to stay there. So we'll see what happens. But that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. Be sure to make sure your third listen, after we've already talked about Locked On Now, make your second listen Locked On MLB with our pal Sully, as he brings you his unique perspective on the majors, both past and present, available and free wherever you get your podcast, just like this podcast on YouTube. We're very close to 1,000 subscribers, so be sure to keep hitting that subscribe button. And once again, just as an FYI, we'll have a second episode out later today before first pitch, previewing this series coming up with the Baltimore Orioles. And until I talk to you then, be sure to stay safe, stay well, and have a fantastic day.